What up, artists? My name is Dwayne Jones. I'm the creative director and founder of a lifestyle brand called Art Pays Me. This is the Art Pays Me podcast, and I'm passionate about finding ways that people like you and me can make a living for ourselves off of our creativity. And, maybe we can make the world a better place at the same time. Let's get into it. Welcome to Art Pays Me. Today I have Paul Chin. So Paul, let the people know what you do.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Paul Chin. I'm a musician. I first and foremost, I'm a lover and endless student of music, and that is just a thing that manifests in the way that I make music, the way that I perform music, the way that I think about music. So I live in Toronto, operate as a producer and DJ, sometimes songwriter. And yeah, that's really what we're here to talk about today.
Yo, I was checking on one of your mixes the other day. Actually, that it was a vibe, man. I really
Thank you. Which one was it?
You're gonna put me on the spot, and I can't remember what it is. It was whatever the latest one is on your site.
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, we'll figure it out later, or the people can go to my website and check it out for themselves.
Yeah, I couldn't remember what it was. I can't remember.
Check out this mystery mix that's a vibe.
No, okay, so I was wondering, like, it has like little vocal points in there. Are those pieces because I didn't even recognize most of the songs. So it was like, are those pieces from the songs, or are those like little vocal things that you're adding in yourself?
Yeah, I guess it would depend on what mix we're talking about. There are Okay, well, let's figure out what this mix is right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oof. Just knocking my own microphone. But yeah, most of the time when I like record just a DJ mix, I try to keep it as much about the music as possible. Try not to go in too much and add too much like extra to it, because just like there's a lot of really great music. There's and when I'm DJing, I like to have a lot of fun with it. I like to really kind of like study the music, figure out what are really interesting things that people have been doing with the songs and in the production, and what can I tie that into in the next song that I'm going to play, or another song, or an overall theme, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, that kind of speaks to that nerdiness and studious attitude I kind of take toward music, because I know how hard people work at it. So I want to make sure that that's like honored and respected and really shines through in anything that I'm doing where I might be presenting someone else's art.
Got you. So I found it. It was the Serato Cast Mix 72.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that one was a mix that I did for Serato. Shout out to Matt, shout out to OP, the whole gang. So that one was one that I just really wanted to kind of go through and just play some songs I was really loving, that year, and really just get as eclectic as I like to, because I consider myself an open format DJ. Like, I started learning to DJ kind of like in the tradition of hip hop, but like hip hop has so much connection and so many roots to so many other things, be it via sampling, be it via, crossover appeal, be it via various collabs with other people who work in different sectors. And so that's kind of how I really came up, DJing as if every song was a rap song, but playing a wide variety of music.
Yeah, that's so
trying
crazy.
to make those connections.
That's crazy, because like I was gonna say that, like, I can sense it feels hip hop the way you're putting things together, but like the music isn't necessarily hip hop usually.
Yeah.
In every case. So.
Yeah. Music's really fun when you stop and decide to just kind of like learn about it.
Right. Yeah. I'm a graphic designer, so sometimes I think of DJs as like music's equivalent to a graphic designer, because like
Yeah,
you're taking these found pieces and you're putting them together in an interesting way to make something new.
that's exactly it. I look at like my production sessions in Ableton the way that I look at uh like my layers palette in Photoshop or Illustrator, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just putting things in the right places in the right proportions, so that the flattened image that you get at the end of it is, the thing you intended, right? Like it's a beautiful and coherent uh end product or end production.
Mm, right, right. So you grew up in Toronto, am I correct?
No, I grew up in the Cayman Islands, although I have spent my entire adult life in Toronto. So, you're not wrong.
Shout out to the Island Boys, man.
Yeah.
I grew up in Bermuda, so
Oh,
uh,
tight, tight.
yeah, actually, Cayman is oftentimes compared to Bermuda in terms of like you have the international business connects and all that.
Hmm.
Because whenever I remember growing up, like you guys are always we always told that that's our competition for them them.
Really? Because we never talked about you at all.
I'm like, yeah, them guys is trying to take us, compete with us for that dirty U.S. money.
It's such a weird thing, and I've only as an adult have I come to realize nothing about what I knew of my experience growing up, nothing about it makes any sense.
Mm,
It's always been this weird thing where it's like, oh yeah, you grow up in a small place and you think, largely speaking, your entire world for the most part, like on a day-to-day level, is just everything on this island, right? Like everything within this very confined landmass, right? And you
mm,
think that that's your own thing, and it's like, okay, cool, so we're our own place, we have our own culture, we're all of these other things. And then, as you grow up and you get older and you realize that the fact that we are like 1 hour's flight away from Miami. It was like that's not a thing that's lost on people, right? That's a thing that has been fully capitalized upon by the tourism sector, the business sector, all these other things, right?
yeah.
And so now I think back about like Cayman, and I visit often still. My family's still there. Um, but yeah, I walk around, I'm like, wow, this place makes no sense. I have no idea how anything is real here, because everything is everything is kind of like subject to the almighty, power and influence of international tourism,
Mm,
and people who come in and are here for, between a business day and a week or two. And everything is kind of subject to their whims and making them happy and making, and accommodating them and, their desires and their fantasy of this like tropical island getaway wherein, everything is perfect and the weather is nice and everything is, addressed and catered to you. And it's like, well, that's actually not real life. And so how does all the other stuff get done? How do roads get paved, and how do, schools get built and managed, and how does that like sustain itself?
mm.
So yeah, I mean, post-colonial, Caribbean tourism, all these things, I think about that stuff a lot, because I just have very complicated feelings around it.
No, it is kind of crazy because like, people often ask me sometimes. I think they're a little curious how I'm so well versed in North American culture and why my accent's so weak. And it's like when you got U.S. tourists like around you all the time, you got the British influence, you got other island influence.
Hmm.
We were 2 hours away from New York, so it's like though you just can't shake it. You grow up
Yeah.
on Canadian and American TV. It's just
Yeah, for better or worse. My experience of growing up was very Americanized. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think in some regards, like I I'm very thankful for that, because, that's like how I was getting like hip hop and, staying up on like, you know, North American pop culture during the 2000s, which was probably like in my, of course, experience, one of the most fun and dynamic and vibrant times
Yeah.
uh, in music. And to just be like a bystander of that was a great blessing, and honestly a significant contributor to the way that I would develop as an artist, and the way that I would think about things, and the things that I would be like, uh, have like a fondness for, right? As
Yeah.
I kind of develop my own voice creatively. But then I also think about that and I'm like, well, as much attention or as much occupancy as like, these foreign styles of music and art and culture have taken up in my brain and in my own sort of like sense of self as a creator, how much of that has really displaced my own local culture, right? Like
Mm.
how much of that has displaced my own sort of like uh local sense of like culture and communal sort of like investment in learning these things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've only like recently just felt comfortable enough to start making stuff that like has like a reggae or dancehall kind of influence to it, and still taking that and making it feel more like myself as a person who is like now living in North America, and travels the world, and consumes culture and art and the different voices and styles of artists from all over the world.
Mhm.
um but I also think about the fact that I actually really don't like soca that much, which which is frankly blasphemous
Just gonna say.
amongst a lot of my peers and a lot of my friends who still live back home, and they're like, what do you mean you don't like soca? I was like, yeah, I feel like by the time Dead or Alive came out in 2005, I was like, cool, this is the last song. This is the last soca song. This is the best one, and I've got it from here. And
Mm.
that's actually just how I feel.
Right. Right. I'm kind of like I like soca shows, but I'm not really into soca like that. And I kind of had the same situation with dancehall. There was a year that I just stopped listening to it, and I was all hip hop from then on. And
Yeah, it's funny because like dancehall and all kinds of like different flavors of reggae, from like roots and dub and all this other stuff, like that stuff kind of circulates in and out of my like radius or my consciousness, like every couple of years, like every, or even like every couple of months.
yeah,
And I'll just go through a phase where I'm like, yeah, I'm like really nostalgic for this, or really feeling this and really wanting to dive deeper into what else is out there, what else is going on, because there's always something else to learn or discover. And then I'm like, cool, yeah, I got it. I think I'm good. I'm gonna go back to something with an 808 right now. But yeah, like it just doesn't really happen for me with soca. And
mm,
I wish I knew why. I wish I knew why. I wish I could understand why. um yeah, like I one of my oldest and like my actual oldest friend in the world just got married in December, and I was home and I DJ'd the wedding. And a big part of it was like, oh yeah, I really want to make sure that she and her bridal party and all our friends and our peers have a good time. But more than anything, I actually wanted to make sure that her parents had a good time, because um, they are probably the most important people in the world to me who are not my own parents.
yeah,
um, as far as like my own like development and upbringing as like an artistically inclined child.
mm,
Um, so shout out Mr. Henry and Miss Marcia Mutu. Yeah, I just really want to make sure that they had a great time, and I like hit her up and hit up her sister, and we're like, hey, I need to know what's your dad's favorite song? What are your parents' favorite songs? I need to know what they are because I want to make sure that I can play those. And yeah, it was like obviously a lot of like old calypso.
mm,
And so I was like, okay, all right. So I got to figure out how, like, obviously I'm going to play these songs, but I got to figure out how I can incorporate them into my set and really kind of make them feel like this isn't just the block of the evening where I just play these songs,
Yeah.
where I just kind of drop these songs as like a, okay, here you go, I'm delivering what you asked for before I get back to what I really want to do.
Hmm.
Yes, but I really wish that I had more of an intuition or like a inclination for that stuff naturally, because I know a lot, it's important to a lot of people, and I honor and respect that, and I know that it's important to a lot of people who are like me, right? Like who are, West Indian or of the West Indian diaspora and all of this stuff. And I know that, these are musical traditions that mean something to people and come out of very, very rich histories, and and I and I just wish that I wish that somehow I could make that mean more to me in the
Yeah.
way that, other stuff does.
Right.
But I don't beat myself up over it too much, because I also know that, well, you know what? Like, the entire Neptune's catalog of production means so much to me, and it doesn't mean anything to a lot of people. Or like, the life and career and legacy of Jay Dilla means so much to me, and it doesn't mean anything at all to a lot of my friends and a lot of other people who are like close to me and would self-identify as like rap fans, right? Or like beat production fans, and that stuff, like, doesn't really resonate with them in the same way. So
Mm.
I acknowledge that, not everything makes it all the way to your heart. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, like in terms of production, I actually did pick up some Dilla influence in your beats. You're so you're not just a DJ, you're also a producer.
yes.
I always wondered this about like producers in your situation. Like, how difficult is it to clear samples, or do you clear samples at this stage?
So clearing samples, an in, that is more than a TED Talk. That's an entire semester at a prestigious Ivy League university. So clearing samples, I have never formally cleared a sample before.
Okay.
Fortunately, I am unimportant enough that has not mattered to people. Like, nobody is checking for my Bandcamp to find my old beats and be like, hey, wait a second, we didn't get a check for this.
Right.
um it's not a thing that I've done, and largely because nobody really teaches you how to do that. There's not a very clear path to that or anything like that. There's just not anything that's readily available, or a single, I think, process
Mm.
that is widely known and shared and disseminated amongst people in terms of how to do that, which is really frustrating, because I would clear samples if I could, or I would at least attempt. And I have made an attempt once. I have made an attempt once to clear a sample, and I won't say who the artist is or what the song is, but I did actually reach out to this person's manager after doing like months and months of digging around, and truly too much labor to find the business contact for this person, right?
Yeah.
So first and foremost, like me, a person with all the best intentions to actually do right by this artist, or these rights holders, I'm actually trying to do this, and all the information that I need in order to even attempt this is so obscured and hidden away, and kind of like kept at arm's length.
Mm.
And that's really frustrating. And of course, it's no wonder that like a whole generation of like SoundCloud kids just would never give a damn about it.
Right. Yeah, it's
uh
really difficult.
we're an entire generation of artists who um are largely self-taught. We learn to do everything ourselves. We thrive on the quickness of just being able to just do something yourself and do it quickly, and you have the access to the raw materials to do that, which is the recordings that you then chop up and loop and warp and whatever you want to do to it. And then when it comes time to actually do doing the music is super easy. Doing the business, next to impossible for most people. So people just don't. Um, but yeah, so I found this person's manager, and then I reached out to them, and fortunately they responded and were like, hey, so thanks for reaching out. What you're looking for is this person who administers their publishing at such and such, large label publishing arm. But I'm just going to forewarn you, it's probably going to be expensive, and, they might not respond to you. And I was like, well, that is fine. And I'm sure both of those things are true. And one of them was, at least conclusively, in that they didn't respond to me. But to this day, I have no idea how much money it would have been to clear the sample.
Right.
And I'm just kind of like, well, do you not want my money? I don't know that I have it, but if I did, by you not taking my emails or what have you, you're just sort of like, your money's unimportant because, we can't, the thing that you've made has not been, I don't know, commercially viable enough or large or made enough news. Basically, it's like nobody wants to help you clear a sample until such time as it's time for them to collect on back owed royalties because you didn't clear the sample.
Right.
And that's wildly frustrating. So largely speaking, I've just stopped using samples.
So you find ways to create your own sounds and
yeah, I mean, I'm a classically trained musician. I was in music lessons my entire childhood, like age 4 through 17 when I left home. I always had formal music lessons. And so I know how to play instruments, plural. I know how to play different styles of music, plural. And I continue to study and learn and teach myself and develop those skills to this day. But that said, again, there's a whole generation of kids who didn't have that, right? That's the basis of hip hop, right? It was a generation of kids who didn't have access to expensive instruments or expensive music lessons or what have you. And so they just started because they were just so creative and just so inventive and ingenious. They, took what they did have, which was, their parents' record collections, and, they'd pool up money or sometimes borrow and steal, sampling equipment and all this other stuff. And you just make whatever you would make with what you had available. And that's such a beautiful thing about art, which is that's how it happens. That's how it happens largely. Or in fact, all of the time, you make what you make with what you have available. And sometimes you have, privilege and money and materials and training and all these things available. And sometimes you just have an ear. Sometimes you just have a really good ear and, an internet connection or a library card.
Yeah.
So
speaking of people who did check for you, you got nominated for a Polaris Award, am I correct?
Kind of, sort of. So I produced on Shad's last album, Short Story About a War, which did get nominated for a Polaris. So I'm not a Polaris nominated artist, but I am a Polaris nominated producer.
By proximity, you're
by proximity, and I'll take it. I'll take it. I'm very proud of that work. I'm very proud to have been on that album and been in the company that I was. Rich Kid produced on that album, Tilo, Toolman, K Tronada. So, the fact that I'm also on there amongst these people who are all great and seasoned producers. I feel very proud about that. And I mean, I'm gonna bang that on my chest till the day I die.
Yeah, Shad is dope too. That's good.
Yeah, big ups to the homie.
Yeah. So I noticed you had a 5-year lapse between. You've got your new album called Full Spectrum coming out, and 5 years between your last release. What's up with the break?
Oh man, a lot. So yeah, like if you check the discography prior to that, 2012 through 2015, I was dropping at least one project a year.
Hmm.
And then 2015 hit, and a lot of things happened, kind of in basically in the span of like March of that year to June. Just my whole life turned upside down. Um, in that, like I was signed to a label at the time for that last record, and just like the entire press rollout of that project just evaporated and combusted because people are unreliable and the music industry is a cold and savage place sometimes.
Mm.
um and on top of that, my immigration status was expiring, and my application to become a permanent resident at that time had been rejected, largely because the system does not favor a diverse range of employment, as much as they'd like to think they do, or at least did not at the time. I have no idea what the application process is like now, because I'm pretty sure it changed at least twice in the time, like between the time I applied and when I actually got my rejection.
Hmm.
And then so like I had to move back home. I was back home in Cayman for like 9 months. I was also planning a wedding because I'd gotten engaged that year as well. And so like with all of that going on, and then on top of that, like my record just kind of flopping, and just under delivering and underperforming in pretty much every way, I was like, you know what, I need a break, and I need to do something else, and I'm not going to stop doing music. I just need to do it differently.
Mm.
um so in the time between 2015 and now, a lot of that time was spent, making myself available to collaborate with the friends I never had time to collaborate with, to make all kinds of different musical projects, for different applications. So like I, was doing like theme songs and doing music for video games, and licensed some music for television, and was also just really making a bunch of different styles of music and trying different things out. And again, like in full student mode again, really, right?
Yeah.
Where I was like, okay, so I don't have the pressure, the self-imposed pressure of having to deliver another 5, 6, 7 songs um, in the next like year. So I can actually just take all this time, and I can just be making all this music, and not actually be burdened with the thoughts of like, oh, is this going to work with all the other stuff? Is this going to fit? Or like, does this sound like the same person made it? Does this follow up the last record well, or all that stuff? Like, I just didn't have to think about that. The only thing I had to concern myself with was, how do I feel about this song right now? Or how do I even feel about like this song idea right now?
Yeah.
And it was great. It was super refreshing. I did a lot of stuff, I think just creatively and process wise, that I had never done before, right? Like there was a period where I just was exhausted of all the stuff I was listening to and gravitated toward listening to. And I deleted all the music off my phone. And instead I had one Dilla album, I had one Madlib album, and I filled the rest of it with just like movie and video game scores and anime scores, and just like soundtracks and scores. Cause I
Wow.
was like, all of this stuff like all this stuff resonates with me. I really love it, but it resonates with me in a different context and in a different way than like music I listen to for listening's sake, finger quotes. It resonates with me in a different way than that stuff does. But it does all the same stuff, right? Like it takes you from the top of a story to the end. It
Hmm.
has moments of different moods and energy, and it does a lot of that stuff largely with a limited selection of instruments.
Yeah.
And I was like, these are all things that I aspire to do in my production in every project that I make. And I'm trying to just kind of like, I'm just kind of like fumbling through getting that stuff or like achieving those goals every single time when I have like this wide range of reference material uh, that I can just like study and really learn from and actually, dissect and reverse engineer. That was a really great time. I was just like watching a lot of movies and TV shows and stuff that was set in different periods and also just picking up on the fact that, oh yeah, like music was just different at different times, right? Like people were largely listening to different things at different times and in different places. What was going on in the 70s at like, the quote unquote death of disco and the advent of hip hop, or what's going on like in the UK right now, or what's going on like in all these different sort of like musical traditions. And it was like a really, really great and refreshing and rejuvenating and inspiring time for me. And it's funny because like after the first year of that, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to make a new record again. And I started doing that, and I just was putting stuff away and not really kind of getting through it. And then the year after that, I was like, actually, now I'm ready to start making a new record. And now I have a concept and I have like a sound that I want to go for and all this other stuff. And then I started doing that record and I made most of it. And then I realized, oh, this is actually very ambitious and probably too ambitious for somebody who has been away from releasing music for like 2-3 years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, well, I need to make something else before I can put this out, or before I can finish this, before people will believe this music from this person. And so then I was like, the year after that, okay, I'm going to start a new record now. And that was kind of the first year where, this start actually ended up following through, and I, moved slowly, and I was doing all these different things and still, collaborating on other things on the side or working with other people and doing things for different projects, and still kind of like just making sure I was capturing ideas and recording stuff and keeping references of whatever I've done in case I want to come back to it or pull from it to put into something else. And also in that year, that was the year that the Shad album came out, and that was also a year I was invited to this songwriting camp, where I met some of the collaborators on this project as well. So that's where I met Desiree Dawson and Natasha Fisher, who also writes on Take It or Leave It. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so that was a period where I was kind of thrust into a new opportunity to work with new people and start making new stuff and all this other stuff. And then later that year, I had another thing, and then Rebecca Hawker, who is a friend of mine, and we like have made a ton of stuff together. We, kind of just like threw two things at each other that were perfectly aligned for, the last song on the project. And then I realized, oh, all of this stuff that I've been doing, all this like practice and just like musical output and musical exploration that I've been doing, all of this stuff is great because it's helping me achieve the thing that I always set out to do in my music, right? Which is carry you on a journey, deliver different moments and different moods and different energies, and just like really and sound cohesive. And all of that was happening because I'd spent the last couple of years just practicing music and developing my own voice and my own sound, and like really becoming more confident in that, so that it no longer had to be a thing that I had to specifically set out to do, to make music that sounded like me. Mm-hmm. But it was just that now everything that I make just sounds like me because I made it, right? And because I made it as somebody who now has been embedded in this practice of just making stuff and exploring stuff and figuring out what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like I didn't set out to make like a record that was largely features. That just accidentally happened because that was like I just ended up making so much of that music. I ended up making so much music with my friends and my loved ones. And that stuff also inherently just fit together because it was coming from a place of confidence and comfort. So yeah, the thing that I like to tell people now is that full spectrum is named full spectrum because it feels like the first thing that I've ever made where I'm like actually painting with all the colors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like painting with all the colors on my palette.
Right.
So yeah, that's what I spent 5 years doing.
Man, so important to just be able to be free and of expectation.
Yeah. And it's funny because like this record is already doing much better than a lot of other stuff that I've done before and put out before, and people are very excited about it. And I've been very intentional about like having the conversation around me making this thing as I was making it, and being very public about the fact that I was making it and working on it and still chipping away at it and fine tuning things, because I think there's kind of an instinct to just be like, okay, I'm in studio mode. I'm going to hide away from the world and I'm just going to disappear and nobody's going to know where I am or what I'm doing or anything at all or what I'm thinking about until I like emerge from this cave X number of months later with a finished thing that nobody else has seen or heard or talked about. And I think that that is a default instinct for a lot of people because that's just what we see. We see that a lot, right? But this time I actually wanted to be like, no, let me share this a little bit. And let me share this in like controlled and specific settings because I didn't want to just be like out here leaking garbage demos that would like kind of taint anybody who was still listening at that point and just kind of taint their impression of what I was making.
Right.
But I wanted to include people who I trusted, like both as like collaborators and other friends and other like friends in music, and other friends of mine who just like also like I think understand me and my motivations as an artist. And so I like since I think maybe last May, I've just been inviting people over to my house and just being like, yeah, let me play this for you. And it wasn't done. And yeah, I would never have people back over necessarily to play it for them again when I like finished other stuff. But I was just like, I want to play this for you because I trust you. And I trust that you will understand what I'm working toward. Like there's enough laid down here that you can get a sense of the thing that I'm creating. And I trust that you understand that, there's more to be done here, but also that, I'm excited about this, right? Like this is a cool thing and it is different and it is bigger and badder than like everything else I've done before. And so it was really great and really refreshing to just have people over and just kind of one-on-one play this thing for them while it was still entirely just art and not yet a product. Yeah. Yeah. So, and like having done that, now I don't even think about this thing in the terms of like, oh, I'm releasing it and finally like allowing it to breathe and come into the world or whatever. Cause I'm like, no, it's been out here, right? Like some of these songs have been done longer than others. Some of them I've like been playing out in DJ sets and stuff. Like I've done a couple live shows since last fall where I've like been playing like early versions or preliminary versions of like the live show that I now have kind of like fully designed and fully kind of like formed in my head and like in reality around like this music. And so like people have been hearing it, people have been like getting a sense for it in specific contexts, and I feel very relaxed about it because I'm like, yeah, like if this record again, like this record could like go absolutely plastic. Um, and but I'd feel better about it because it will have already reached the people who are important to me, which are people who think critically about art, um, you know, think with a explorative imagination about art, think, people who just like are heads, people who dig into stuff, people who want to know more, people who are intrigued by a wide variety of things, even if, it doesn't sound like anything else. And I don't think a lot of my stuff sounds like a lot. I don't think this record sounds like a lot of stuff,
No, it doesn't.
or a lot of stuff that, people are being exposed to, for the most part. I think it sounds like a lot of stuff in the sense that I draw from a wide variety of influences, but it doesn't sound like any one other thing.
No, which some people will be critical of this, but I guess in this day and age, it works in your favor. But I find that it's hard to put your finger on a genre for it. You know, I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, people ask me, "Oh, what kind of music do you make?" And I'm like, I'm not interested in having that conversation
Mhm,
because it only takes you 20 minutes to listen to the whole thing front to back.
mhm.
So if you can put 20 minutes to just listen to it, it's better than the 20 minutes I'm going to spend doing a terrible job of trying to explain to you what this music is with words,
Just listen. Just
Like
listen.
I'm going to spend 20 minutes just trying to put word, like I'm basically just going to spend 20 minutes listing a bunch of genres that like inspired and like I listened to and referenced, and you're still going to hear this thing and it's going to sound like none of them, so you're going to feel like I wasted your time as well.
Yeah.
So spend your 20 minutes just listening to it, or we can spend another 20 minutes after you've listened to it and actually just talk about all that stuff
Right.
from the position of people who now like have a shared language, right?
Mhm.
Because you've heard it. So
Right. So in terms of like how you keep yourself, like for me, for like in terms of how you keep your business going as a music thing, is it like the DJing that sort of keeps you afloat on a regular basis, and then you drop albums periodically?
no, not at all. I have a day job. For now. But I have a day job. My wife also works. So again, like I come from a position of privilege and good fortune to be able to uh balance things and, balance the books on in that regard, while I do DJ and do production stuff elsewhere. But I mean, and I think that that's like one nice thing about that is that actually affords me the freedom to actually do stuff for free when I want to, when
Yeah.
I just really, really want to do the thing. And it's going to be very difficult or impossible to sort out the funds that I reasonably should have to get stuff going. Um, but I think if it's like an important enough opportunity, or if it's an important enough like uh entity or institution or organization or what have you that I'm contributing to, then I actually just have the freedom and the leverage to just be like, actually, you know what, like, if you really need it, then I'll do it for you.
Good. Yeah.
Because I think this is important, and I want you to have a good time, and I want you to have a good musical experience as part of whatever this is. Um but that said, I'm also just like, no, I really want to do just the music, and I do want to like do more of that, and spend more time on that, which also means that I have decisions to make around like how much time do I give to my day job, and how much of my attention and effort and mental capacity do I give to that. Um and I mean, this is a thing that every like artist in Toronto on some level has to deal with, right? Because it's expensive to live here.
Hmm.
Um, it's difficult to, just do life under the iron fist of capitalism.
Yeah.
But, you know, at some point, like you also do want to give the appropriate attention and space to the art that you make, because it is valuable, and it should be valued the same way that, like, quote unquote productivity is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, this year is going to be me spending a lot of time trying to get creative around how to make more opportunities for myself, make more time for the opportunities that I have and that I'm turning down, or that I'm not able to, like, fully capitalize on. Yeah, just, figuring out how to get, like, art pays me now, but I'm trying to figure out how to get art to pay me more and better.
I feel like you're the music me, man, because I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
No, it's like that juggle, like that I have a full-time job as well. And it's like, um, yeah, trying to figure out how to get it to pay enough to do more of it is the ongoing struggle.
Yeah, the attitude that I've taken for myself this year is really just like, I'm not asking anymore if my art is good enough. Like, I know it is.
No, it is. Yep.
I know it is. And so now I'm just acting accordingly and trying to behave accordingly and set myself up so that I can continue to act accordingly and behave accordingly. Yeah, like, there are so many the key to surviving in the music industry really and truly is not selling records, and it's not even necessarily just going on tour, but it is fine. It is the completeness of all the weird and interesting and secret kind of ways that you can carve out, like, a check for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's so many different ways to, like, actually monetize the music that you make beyond just, like, a direct exchange between, like, a consumer. But yeah, it really takes a lot of time and effort and attention to A, seek out those opportunities, and B, be ready for them when they present themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of like me doing research. I'm honestly, like, every night I come home and I'm just, like, doing research, and I'm looking up, okay, who's representing this and who's doing that and who puts out this and how does this get done and what opportunities are there here. Is there something that's coming up? Is there something that's on the horizon that nobody's, like, really on yet? And just, like, really trying to find all the different ways in which I can envision, like, the music that I make contributing to different experiences.
Right.
So
That's a good way to finish it up, man. I really love that. It's You're right. Like, hit them in multiple angles, man, and you never know which one's gonna hit. It's like,
yeah, it really is a numbers game. The thing that I have discovered as a entirely self-managed artist, which I hate, by the way. Like, I hate being like, a lot of people like to, fly that flag, and they're like, yeah, I do everything myself. I, like, manage myself. Da, da, da. I actually hate that, because I'm like, I'm not a manager, and I believe in hiring experts to do the things that they're experts in, and I'm not an expert in this, but I have to do it. But yeah, like, the thing that I have learned as, like, a self-managed artist or what have you is that like, all the different parts of the operation will always just require the same number of man hours they require, right? Like, it's never going to take less than however many hours it takes to, like, get your visual set. It's never going to take less than however many hours it takes to make the music. It's never going to take less hours than it takes to send all the emails or all the cold calls or whatever.
yeah.
But if you don't have a team, and if you don't have, like, the agent and the manager and the publicist and the whoever else, right, and the engineer and all this other stuff, you just have to spend all that time yourself. Like, those hours all just get stacked onto your workload.
Yeah.
So it really is a big job of carving out the runway to get all the stuff done so that you can do it well, and so you can set yourself up for success in all the areas you actually intend to be visible in.
Dope. So,
Yeah.
how can people get the album? When can we get it?
Okay, so listen carefully. I am at Oh Yeah Paul Chin on all the things that I'm on. So that's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, what have you. My website is ohyeahpaulchin.com. If you use Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, Deezer, whatever you use, I'm just Paul Chin there. You'll see a picture of my smiling face on all of those platforms. Yeah, Full Spectrum comes out on March 20th and is available on Bandcamp right now for pre-order. You pre-order it, you can get the first single, which is Take It or Leave It, featuring Desiree Dawson. That's out now everywhere. If you want to follow me on Spotify, actually hit the follow button. Then you'll be notified on day one when it comes out. I got a link in my Instagram bio and other bios elsewhere. You can hit that and you can pre-save Full Spectrum so that it shows up in your Spotify on day one. I believe pre-save for Apple Music or pre-order for iTunes is supposed to hit Wednesday. What day is it today? The Wednesday, the 11th. Yeah, I'm very out here, extremely online individual. Yeah, search me up, Paul Chin. I'm very Googleable. You'll know the one. There are a lot of, don't Google image search because you'll find a lot of other guys. But if you just search Paul Chin, yeah, you'll find me.
All right. Paul, it was a pleasure. I have a lot of things I could still talk to you about, but unfortunately, I got daddy duty right now.
So, all right.
Yeah, man. Thank you for taking the time out to chat with me. And
yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Peace.
All right. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening to the Art Pays Me podcast. Thank you to Langy Beats for the theme music. If you got anything out of this show, please rate, review, and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. The more you do this, the more reach the podcast gets, and the more artists I can help learn to make a living at what they love. If you want to know more about what I do, hit me up at artpaysme.com or at artpaysme on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Pinterest. See y'all next time.